Hello and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video we're still looking at new Phyrexia, and we're going to move on and look at Life for Death, which is a red and white deck which is all about Phyrexian mana. So finally get to talk about that. So let's dive in and start looking at it. So the foil face rare is Molten Steel Dragon, which is 4 mana and 2 Phyrexian red mana. So Phyrexian mana, in case you are like very new to the game or like you just weren't involved in this set. I think Phyrexian mana has come back in all will be one, but just I can't remember off the top of my head if it has, but just in case it hasn't, or you just want an explanation. So Phyrexian mana, as it says here in the reminder text. So coloured Phyrexian mana can be paid with either mana of the same colour or 2 life. So red Phyrexian mana, you either pay red or 2 life, and because it's got 2 Phyrexian mana in its casting cost, you could cast this for 4 colourless and 4 life. So thoughts on Phyrexian mana. It's very good, and it kind of I want to say it kind of broke the game a little bit, because it just means when you give the option to bypass paying mana when you pay life. I think you have to be very careful, and it opens things up to abuse. Because there were a bunch of like creatures and spells which had Phyrexian mana in the casting cost, which meant that you could play those spells in basically any deck. As long as you can pay the life, you can cast it. So like there's nothing really stopping you putting, say, Molten Steel Dragon in a white and blue deck, because you don't need red mana to cast it. You can just pay the life instead of those mana symbols. So it caused a bit of a stir. If you're interested, I think probably like just Google the impact Phyrexian mana had. Stuff like, I don't know, Spell Skite or Birthing Pod, or even just like was it Mental Misstep or Gitaxian Probe. Just cards like that like caused like a lot of issues at the time. And I think most of them did get banned or restricted in some way. My thoughts on Phyrexian mana is that I think it's fine. But actually, it's very similar to how I think about hybrid mana now. Actually, I think it's okay, but not in casting costs. I think Phyrexian mana and hybrid mana is fine in activation costs of abilities, but yeah, not in main casting costs. That's just my thoughts of it, and I think that's kind of where Magic design has kind of gone. But yeah, anyway, as it does mean, you can cast this massive dragon for just 4 mana and 4 life, and to get a 4/4 flyer out. Which I think it's worth doing. It means if you can get it down kind of a turn earlier than expected, then sure, and you don't need to have red mana open to do it either. So if you just had had a opening hand of this and 4 planes, you could still cast this. But yeah, it's just a 4/4 flyer, and for 1 Phyrexian red, you can give it +1/+0 on turn. So it's kind of Phyrexian Shivan Dragon, really. And this, I think this is actually an okay rare card that uses Phyrexian mana, because it's not super pushed, and because it's essentially it's kind of like an inferior version of a card that already exists, like Shivan Dragon. The advantage is that you cast it for cheaper by paying life, whereas I say the problematic cards were giving really strong effects to to colors that wouldn't, or decks that wouldn't normally be able to cast them. Anyway, that's my rant on Phyrexian mana. I think Molten Steel Dragon is okay. I do think it's a little boring, but I think it's okay for an intro deck rare, and it probably looks really nice in foil because it's really nice art. So a lot of cards in the deck use Phyrexian mana in one way or another, like Immolating Soul Eater here. So it's 2 mana for a 1/1, 1 red Phyrexian to get +1/+0 till end of turn. So this is fine, just like little fire breathing creature. And honestly, fire breathing is a pretty good ability to put Phyrexian mana on, because like if you desperately need to get in that extra 1 or 2 points of power, and all your mana is tapped, you can do it. So yeah, I think it's pretty good. Blinding Soul Eater, 3 for a 1/3, 1 white Phyrexian and tap target creature. Again, 1 white mana to do this ability, like Master Decoy ability, is absolutely fine. But if you absolutely need to do it and you are tapped out, you have the option. So yeah, this is where I think Phyrexian mana is fine in the activation activation costs, honestly. well, as an example of this, so 3 Porcelain Legionnaires, so 2 and 1 white Phyrexian for 3/1 first strike, which is like pretty, honestly, that's obviously really, really good stats. Yeah, if you paid 2 for this and 2 life and got, it's the 3/1 first strike, that's a really good deal. That's like a really, that's a really good like second turn play. And I almost want to say there was like some sort of joke at the time, like, oh, this is the best blue creature ever printed because, it gave, you could play like mono blue and still have this creature in it, because you would just, pay 2 and 2 life to get a 3/1 first strike, which obviously blue, if you're playing mono blue, normally you don't have access to. So that's an example of where I think Phyrexia mana is like a little bit, like, I guess, problematic, because like hybrid mana, it just kind of lets it bleed into kind of too many decks, and I don't know, then the colors kind of lose some of their distinction and what makes them that color, I guess. But Porcelain Legionnaire, great, is a really great card. I guess I don't know, if I would go back and fix it, I would maybe make it like 1 colorless, 1 white, and then 1 white Phyrexian. I suppose so you still have to pay at least 1 white mana to kind of get it. But yeah, this is a really strong common. Just being able to drop it turn 2 is really good. Slash Panther is not so good, I think. So 4 and 1 red Phyrexian for a 4/2 with haste. I suppose you could say like even just paying 4 for a 4/2 with haste is okay, but not as good as Porcelain Legionnaire. Porcelain Legionnaire is really solid. Slash Panther is okay. And then a single Cathedral Membrane, 1 and 1 white Phyrexian for a 0/3 defender. When it dies during combat, it does 6 damage to each creature it blocked, which is like a really good deterrent. Like, no one wants to attack into this and kill it, because 6 damage is usually enough to kill whatever it blocks. So yeah, this is pretty good. Kind of wish there'd been maybe an extra one of these, but yeah, it's fine. I like it. So because if you're paying a lot of life for Phyrexian mana, you need some way to get life back. So we have a single Inquisitor Exarch, 2 white mana for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you choose one. You either gain 2 life, or you can make an opponent lose 2 life. And making an opponent lose life is obviously a weird effect to see on a white card, but we're in Phyrexia now, baby. So every color can make you lose life. This is obviously like really nice. Really nice options to have here. Either boost up your life, or as saying, sneak in an extra 2 onto an opponent. So yeah, really, really good. Really like Inquisitor Exarch. A single Shattered Angel, so 3 and 2 white for a 3/3 flyer. Whenever a land enters a battlefield under an opponent's control, you gain 3 life. So it's kind of like reverse landfall, I suppose. Like, it counts when your opponents play lands. Maybe a little expensive, 5 mana to come down. But then it does dissuade them, I guess, from playing lands, because then you're just going to gain life, which you can then use for Phyrexian mana, I suppose. And 2 Kemba Skyguard, 1 and 2 white for a 2/2 flyer. When it ends battlefield, gain 2 life. Yep, so you have a nice little evasive creature here and a nice little boost of life. So that's essentially, in this deck, says you gain 1 Phyrexian mana. And then a single Ogre Resistor, who's just whatever, 2 and 2 red for a 4/3 vanilla, sure. And a single Lumen Grid Gargoyle, 6 mana for a 4/4 flyer. Again, sort of alright, I suppose. So this is a really interesting card now. Moving on to the non-creature spells. Rage Extractor, 2 of these. So 4 and 1 red Phyrexian. Whenever you cast a spell with Phyrexian mana in its mana cost, Rage Extractor deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to target creature or player. So this is like a really interesting card. I really like this, that it plays around with Phyrexian mana. Like, overall, I really like the theme of this deck, because it is like an absolute laser focus on using Phyrexian mana and like cards that support it. So really, really like it. And this, as far as I know, Rage Extractor was like the only card in New Phyrex that really cared about Phyrexian mana this way. Like, nothing else, I don't think, really got bonuses or benefits, like if you like, oh, if you cast this spell using life or something, not that I can think of. But yeah, really like Rage Extractor. It's maybe a little expensive, because again, it sort of suffers this problem I always kind of find with cards like this that care about when you cast spells with a certain value. The fact it's like, I guess you can offset it by playing it turn 4, but it's like there's always a chance this comes down too late in the game for it to matter anymore, because like you've cast all your stuff that has Phyrexian mana, I guess, or like most of the things. But really interesting design, and the fact that it doesn't require like mana to use its ability, it just always goes off, and it can hit creatures and players. Like, it's a really interesting card. I really like it. So we have 2 active aggressions, so 3 and 2 Phyrexian mana. Instant speed, gain control of type creature and opponent controls until end of turn, untap it and gains haste until end of turn. So this is, it's instant speed, active treason, but you can pay it for 3 colorless, and obviously like 4 life, which is like a fairly big chunk to do. But active trees and effects at instant speed are really, really strong, because it means you can steal an attacking creature and then use it to block with, and essentially like kill off 2 opponents' creatures. So this is really good. Again, just to have the flexibility of being able to do that for 3, like if you're mostly tapped out, yeah, really good. A single gut shot, so 1 red Phyrexian, does 1 damage to target creature or player. So I kind of like, when this came out, I kind of kind of poo-pooed it a little bit. It's like, oh, 1 damage, whatever. But again, I think it's one of those. It was one of the more problematic Phyrexian mana cards, just because it looks so innocent, but it is, it's essentially free, because it's just 2 life, whatever, and to do 1 damage, which I suppose in certain formats does matter, because you have small useful utility creatures. Being able to just do 1 damage to something at instant speed just for 2 life, and have that available to any deck is really, really strong. So yeah, I've definitely come to appreciate why Gutshot is pretty good, honestly. Like in this kind of like precon biome, essentially, if you were just playing these decks against each other, this would feel kind of weak. But at competitive levels of Magic, I can see this being obviously like stronger than it looks here. A single Apostle's Blessing. Kind of wish there'd been more than one of these, honestly. So 1 and 1 white Phyrexian mana. Target artifact or creature you control gets protection from artifacts or from the card of your choice. Turn. Yep, this is just really, giving. I've said it loads of times before, but giving protection at instant speed is like a really, really strong combat trick. Even better when you only have to pay like 1 colorless and maybe some life for it. So yeah, that's really also really nice that this can protect artifacts you control. It can protect non-creatures, essentially, which is pretty useful to keep them from blowing up. I know useful artifacts you have. Yeah, it's good. A single Marrow Shards, 1 white Phyrexian, to do 1 damage to each attacking creature. This is okay as well, I think. This is what essentially Phyrexian. Oh, was it Rain of Swords, Rain of Blades? It was a white. It's a white spell that does exactly this, but it's just 1 white instead of 1 white Phyrexian. This is okay. Obviously, just kill a bunch of small attacking creatures. It's all right. So the other rare in the deck, which is from Mirrodin Besieged, is Phyrexian Rebirth, so 4 and 2 white. Destroy all creatures, then put an XX colorless horror artifact creature token onto the play, where X is the number of creatures destroyed this way. So honestly, a bit of a rarity to get a board wipe in a precon, because we never really get those. It's kind of a rare effect to see in these pre-constructed decks. So it's nice here to actually teach maybe a new player who's picking this deck up like the value of a board wipe. And this is a really good board wipe in my opinion. Like, yeah, it's maybe expensive at 6, but it's destroy everything, and then you still get something out of it. Like in the fact it's more expensive, I think goes well with it, because there's more time for the board to develop, more creatures to go down, and then you do this, kill potentially, I don't know, 3, 4, maybe more creatures, and then you're the only one left with a creature on the board, which is pretty good. So yeah, I like Phyrexian Rebirth. And then 2 White Sun's Passage, 1 and a 1 white to gain 5 life at instant speed. This is obviously kind of a bit of a weak card because it is just life gain, doesn't do anything else. But in this deck, I suppose, where you're maybe over relying on Phyrexian mana, this is okay. I suppose, again, you could read this as 1 and 1 white to gain 2 Phyrexian mana and 1 life. I suppose you could see it that way as a kind of weird ritual effect, I guess. And then we have 2 Golems Heart, 2 mana for an artifact. Whenever a player casts an artifact spell, you gain 1 life. So there is like a bit of a life gain theme in here as well to obviously offset the potential that you're using Phyrexian mana. A single Pristine Talisman, 3 taps give you 1 colorless and you gain 1 life. So this is all right as well. Goes okay with the deck. And I always find this kind of effect is something that kind of adds up. People kind of stop paying attention to it, and before they know it, like, oh my god, you've gained like 8 life off your Pristine Talisman. It's like, yep, it's just been there. You don't really want to destroy it because all it does, it's just a mana rock, but there it's slowly ticking away and gaining life. So yeah, this is a kind of a useful little effect. 2 Grax, we love Grak. he's just here hanging out. Yep. A single Solemn Offering, 2 and white to, it's basically sorcery speed disenchant and you gain some life, which again this deck very appreciates. A single Insight. I don't understand why this card is in here. So what is it? So it's a single red, has hilarious artwork. I love the guy on the right. Just so yeah, single red mana. Target creature becomes red until end of turn and attacks this turn if able. Um, the only synergy in this deck I can think of is using this on a creature, and then it attacks and you block it with Cathedral Membrane, and then that dies and it does 6 damage. So really, basically, a really roundabout way of doing 6 damage to an opponent's creature. Yeah, I really don't understand why this card is in here. It really does feel like it's here just to fill space, and like it's such a weak effect, honestly. Even for one red, this is a weak effect. If it was like draw a card, then yeah, I think that would be pretty. That would actually be okay. But it's what it does. It just turns it red, which is it feels like such a silly effect. It's just like he's so angry, he's turned red. Yeah, it's just a weird card to include. And a single lightning bolt. We all know what lightning bolt does. It's great. And then 11 mountains, 13 plains. So yeah, that's it. So what could have been? So this deck is using pretty much all the red and white cards with Phyrexian mana. The only one isn't is kind of like mythics or whatever. And Ruthless Invasion, which is this one here, 3 and 1 red Phyrexian. Non-artifact creatures can't block this turn, which would be okay. That's an effect this deck would kind of want to let your Porcelain Legionnaires get through. Suture Priest would have been nice in here as well because it has this kind of constant life gain. It's kind of like Phyrexian Soul Warden, so that would be all right. But like I was sort of saying, the big thing about Phyrexian mana is that cards that are not playing that color can also use the Phyrexian mana cards. So Vault Scourge is kind of here to represent green, blue, and black Phyrexian mana cards, because you could easily put Vault Scourge in this deck. Because it has Phyrexian mana, you don't need black mana to play it. You can just pay 1 and 2 life, and then you've got a 1/1 flying lifelink, and then it's got lifelink, which obviously helps you out anyway, because then you've got more life then to pay for Phyrexian mana. So I do feel that's like a bit of a missed opportunity not to kind of, I guess, even include 1 or 2 cards just to teach this to new players that like, look, you're just because you're not limited necessarily when to colors, because if you've got other ways of casting it, then absolutely do that. So I think that's a bit of a missed opportunity, and it's kind of, this is really going off tangent, but it's kind of the same feeling I had back in Shadowmoor Eventide, which was so hybrid heavy, and those decks were built as if they were traditional multicolor decks when really there was no reason to, because they were hybrid colors, so you could have like splashed out to other colors. Because everything was hybrid. But yeah, I hope I hope you understand what I mean with this. So in summary, I actually quite like this because the theme I think is really fun, Phyrexian mana, no matter how problematic Phyrexian mana kind of was at the time. It's been reined in now, and I think to a healthy level. But yeah, I think it's a pretty fun twist. It's not something you'd expect in red white to be the Phyrexian mana archetype, I suppose. But yeah, I think it's okay. It's a pretty, without the Phyrexian mana, it's a pretty standard kind of red white deck. But it's it's the Phyrexian mana that makes it potentially have you could play very very aggressively with it, and it actually makes just normal life gain actually very valuable. So yeah, in that regard, I think it's actually quite interesting that it's doing something a little bit different. So yeah, I quite like this one, I think. What are your thoughts on this deck after seeing it? Any thoughts or comments or stories, opinions, either about this deck or the cards in it, or just Phyrexian mana? I would love to hear what people's opinion on Phyrexian mana and its effect on the game is. But yeah, I'll look forward to seeing those comments. But I'll be back next time, going to look at the last deck from New Phyrexia. But until then, thanks for watching and listening. Have a great day.